historically and into modern times as well. Now, we want to know as well today where you're all watching from to see just how wide the Slooh community is stretching today. So let us know by tweeting to @Slooh or make a comment under the video if you're watching on Facebook, and we'll give you a shout out during the show. Now, back to our subject at hand, though. To help us explore the new moon and Venus today, we have some wonderful guests joining the show. I'll be joined by Slooh's own human spirit correspondent, Helen Avery, and she's going to be telling us about the fascinating history and mythology surrounding the Star and Crescent. Plus, with the importance of the new moon to the Islamic faith, I'll be chatting with artist and children's book author Henna Khan, who has penned some fabulous books about that very subject. That's definitely not to be missed later on in the show. But before we meet our guests, let's take a look at our live telescope views tonight. So what have we got? We've got our Pico del Teide cam. This camera is perched on the top of a mighty 10,000 foot high volcano called Pico del Teide, and it looks down on the observatory on the ridge, and the observatory itself is 8,000 feet altitude. So here you can see it, and that strange triangular shadow you can see is actually the shadow of the volcano. And just where it hits the land there, that's where Slooh's observatory is at the Institute of Astrophysics. Let's have a look at our panorama. This is our live panorama from Slooh's flagship observatory at the Institute of Astrophysics at the Canary Islands. And that's about a few hundred miles really off the west coast of Africa. And this is where the telescopes are based that Slooh members get to control every clear night, as well, of course, as the telescopes at our Southern Hemisphere Observatory at the Catholic University's Observatory in Chile. So what have we got there? Well, we can see that great big light dome in the bottom right. So we can see the sun has only recently set and the skies are darkening, which is good for our purpose. Now, let's take a quick look at our dome cam. We've got Slooh's dome cam, which we've pointed to the western horizon, and we can see there that the sun is still kind of lighting up behind the domes. Can't quite see the moon in this shot, but as it gets a little bit darker, that's not, by the way, as the screen says, the Leonid meteor shower from Lapland. That is actually Slooh's dome cam. Not quite sure where that came in, but as the sky gets a little bit darker, we should start to see the thin crescent moon and Venus appearing here. But I think my favorite live stream tonight is from our constellation cam. Now, this is also pointing westward, where, look at that, isn't that a fabulous, fabulous shot? So what we're seeing there is, to the right-hand side, unmistakably, this tiny, thin sliver, this silver slither of the crescent moon as it's setting. And then over to the left, we can see what looks like a bright evening star. But that's the scorched and brilliant planet Venus. We're going to be talking about that a little bit later on. Now, that really is a beautiful shot, isn't it? And that's going to get better and better as well. As the sky darkens, we'll see some more stars come out there as well. We've also got our special low-light meteor cam running today, and that's pointing above the Slooh domes. Now, still a little bit too, actually, no, that's changed quite a lot. So we can just about see the slither, the small white dot. This has got such an incredibly wide field of view to catch meteors. The moon and Venus will appear to be very, very small in there. So that shot may come in a bit later. We may have to adjust the camera though. But let's get our first close-up look at the new moon through our half-meter telescope. That's one of the telescopes that the Slooh members use every night. Now, it captures the moon absolutely beautifully when it's dark. We get a little bit of noise in these images. It's coming up in a second. A little bit of noise in these images when we're trying to image still with some background twilight in the sky. But this is using an ultra-sensitive CCD camera, which is usually used for things like nebulae and galaxies. Look at that thin crescent moon. Isn't that beautiful? Now, I'll tell you, when you look at the high resolution, Slooh members get to to capture the high resolution images of the moon using these telescopes. And this particular telescope, you can zoom in on them and you feel like you're an Apollo astronaut kind of flying over the surface of the moon. And these lesser phases of the moon, when you get all that shadow contrast between the lit portion of the moon and the dark portion of the moon, it's absolutely popping. So we'll be switching between all of our various feeds throughout the show. Now then, if live telescopes and fascinating science, history and art aren't enough for you, we're also running a contest during the show. Now this week, we went out to our social media channels and asked our followers to submit photos or artwork of the Crescent Moon or the Star and Crescent, and we have received some absolutely cracking submissions so far, and we'll be announcing the winner at the end of the show. Now, the winner is going to receive a copy of our brand new book. We're really excited about this. It's called The Saturn Above It, and it's an anthology of short fiction about space. And the book features a number of amazing and intriguing short stories from some of the greatest authors of all time. So if you've got a space fanatic in your house, make sure you jump on Amazon or the Slooh website and you can order a copy of that. Now, during tonight's show, as ever, you can also interact with me or my guests by sending your comments and questions to us in the same way. Just tweet them to @Slooh or drop them into the Facebook live chat and we'll answer them during the show. Hey, look at that. I love this image. That is so cool. A thin crescent moon, only a few days old, and a brilliant evening star, Venus. How cool is that? Now, we are going to take a very quick commercial break, but coming up, we'll talk a little about the basics of the new moon and tell you all about why the bright planet Venus always appears either at dusk or dawn, and why it's so bright. And a little bit later, I'll be joined by children's book author Henna Khan to talk about her work teaching children about Islam and the importance of the moon to the Islamic faith. We will be right back.
We're excited to announce the release of our first book, The Saturn Above It, an anthology of short fiction about space. Available now at slooh.com.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do easy, but because they are hard.
All steps for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Give the gift of the universe. Give the gift of Slooh. Space Explorer.
Those gift memberships, by the way, I've seen them, I've held them. They're very tactile. It's a beautiful gift to give somebody. I know I'm a bit biased, but hey, listen, if you've got a space lover in your household, that will sort Christmas out and their entire year. How cool is that? Now, what is the new moon exactly? We're watching it here, this really thin crescent. Why did we decide to look at a 3-day-old moon rather than a brand new moon? Well, first of all, let's think about the geometry of a full moon. The moon is on one side of the Earth and the sun is on the other. So we see the moon fully illuminated in our night sky. And the full moon rises in the east as the sun is setting in the west. But as the month rolls on, the moon continues its orbit around the Earth with an ever-decreasing amount of it illuminated from our viewpoint on Earth. We've got a diagram to show you that might help. Now, until at new moon, the moon lies between Earth and the sun, the illuminated side of the moon is facing away from us, so we can't really see it. Now, in fact, the only time we can truly see a new moon is when the alignment is absolutely perfect. And the moon broadcasting live. And of course, we've got the amazing Transcontinental Eclipse in 2000 is aligned between the Earth and the sun. So we don't usually see it unless it crosses in front of the sun. But it's in the evenings following that new moon, when the moon is sufficiently separated in the sky from the sun, that it reappears out of the sun's glare as an incredibly thin waxing crescent, just like this evening. And it's these early moon sightings at dusk following a new moon that are so important to the Islamic faith, as we'll discover a little later in the show. Now, if you do have a clear sky this evening, make sure you pop outside and look westward shortly after sunset, and you should see that tiny silver sliver of that 3-day-old moon hovering about 15 or 20 degrees above the horizon. It is an absolutely cracking sight, as this image coming straight from the half-meter telescope in the Canary Islands. That looks pretty good. But hey, listen, what about the star of our show today? Of course, Venus is a planet rather than a star. And just like the other planets in our solar system, it orbits our own star, the sun. Now, it was named for the goddess of love and beauty, but what we know about Venus is far from the picture that kind of conjures up in our mind's eye. It's got an atmospheric pressure of something like 92 times that of Earth, and temperatures that represent the most hellish surface in the entire solar system. This kind of wouldn't be a place to spend your holidays. Instead of a tan, you'd be kind of pressure cooked to a crisp. That's assuming, of course, that the rain from the dense clouds of sulfuric acid that enveloped the planet hadn't actually dissolved your skin and bones beforehand. Now, Venus is the second brightest object in the night sky. I wonder if you knew that. Pretty cool. Only the moon is brighter than Venus. And it's those dense white clouds reflecting sunlight and the planet's proximity to Earth that makes it appear so bright. You'll often hear Venus referred to as well as the morning or even star. And in fact, I think it was early civilizations thought Venus was actually two different celestial bodies called Phosphorus and Hesperus by the Greeks, and Lucifer, not Lucifer the devil, but Lucifer the light bringer, and Vesper by the Romans. So why do we only see Venus at dusk and dawn? Well, Venus is the second planet from the sun. So from Earth's perspective, we always see it fairly close to the sun. As it orbits the sun, Venus overtakes Earth on its inside track and changes from being visible after sunset, as it is tonight. Then it disappears for a period, and then it reappears again before sunrise. Now, because the planet is between Earth and the sun, that's what's called an inferior planet. So no offense, Venus, but you are an inferior planet. We also see Venus with phases similar to that of the moon. And it was Galileo's observation of Venus's phases that was important evidence in favor of Copernicus's heliocentric theory of the solar system, that the planets orbit the sun. We can see similar phases with the other inferior planet, of course, Mercury. Now, Slooh members have been capturing Venus in the evening twilight using the Chile Observatory high magnification telescope each evening recently. And this one was captured by member Craig Edwards. And it shows that Venus's current phase is around 68%, so just after half or a quarter in moon terms. Now, it is a great project to track Venus's changing phase and apparent size over the course of an apparition. An apparition is the viewing season or the period for a planet. Now, I put this one together in 2012 and then turned it into a time lapse that shows the changing face of Venus over only a course of a month. So it really is an absolutely cracking target in the evening or early hours through a telescope, especially Slooh's telescope. Look at that, I love that. Now, if you want to see this brilliant planet for yourself, just pop outside 1 or 2 hours after sunset and look towards the western horizon, where the sun has already set. Venus is going to be unmistakable. It'll almost look like a plane. It's so bright, shining that brilliant, brilliant white as the sun's light is reflected from those dense acidic clouds shrouding the entire planet. Now then, we are going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, Slooh's human spirit correspondent is going to join us to talk about the fascinating history of the Star and Crescent. And then a little bit later, we'll be joined by special guest Henna Khan, author of a number of children's books about Ramadan and the Islamic practice of moon sighting. So Helen will be back right after this short break.
Hi, everybody. I'm Gerard Montu. Now, you might know me by my former stage name, Bill Patrick, from my days with ESPN and NBC Sports. But now I'm the expedition leader here at Slooh, and I'm ready for us to explore the universe together. I'm absolutely thrilled to be a part of this endeavor, believe me. In fact, I'm just one of many new additions coming to Slooh as we celebrate our 13th anniversary. So stay tuned as we roll out a brand new website, new telescopes, and many other surprises we have in store for you. When a magical moment happens in space, I'll be here with our team of experts covering it live, and I know you'll want to be here too. So join us as we explore the stars together here at Slooh, space for everyone.
So welcome back. We're here with Slooh, taking a live look into our night sky this evening at the Crescent Moon and Venus, such an iconic symbol that's been with humanity throughout the ages. And here we are gazing upon it as our ancestors would have. So the Star and Crescent, it's such a well-known symbol. And in fact, if I asked you to grab a pen and paper and draw a moon and a star, chances are you would draw a crescent moon and then a five-pointed star. It just seems to be in our collective consciousness. But why? Today, we tend to associate the symbol of the Star and Crescent with Islam. So we see the Star and Crescent on the top of mosques and minarets and on the flags of Muslim nations. But actually, we find its origin long before Islam existed. And indeed, for that reason, some Muslims actually refute that the symbol has anything to do with Islam at all. So in fact, when we start to delve into history, we discover that the Star and Crescent was a reoccurring symbol over thousands of years by all different peoples, with different gods etched into walls and forged into coins, carved bags and coats of armor. So where did it all begin? Of this symbol appearing are in Sumer, which is one of the first civilizations in the world some 4,000 to 6,000 years ago, in the region we now call southern Iraq. Then three symbols occurred together. There was the star that represented Venus, the crescent moon, and the sun. So the star of Venus represented for the Sumerians the goddess Ishtar. She was the goddess of love and fertility, which was really important to an agrarian society. Later, she became sort of Aphrodite for the Greeks and Venus for the Romans. She was Isis for the Egyptians. And then the crescent moon represented the moon god Sin, his name was. And he was the god of all of creation and all of wisdom. And then the sun was drawn as a disc, and that was the sun god Shamash, who represented sort of justice and divinity. So for the Sumerians, Sin was actually the most important, which is unlike other ancient civilizations where they worshipped mainly the sun god, but the Sumerians, it was mainly Sin. So you can imagine that gazing up at the sky, once a year or so, you would see these two very important gods together, Ishtar and Sin, and what a powerful experience that would have been for the Sumerians. And then we can sort of, begin to see why this symbol of the star and crescent almost became like a talisman. So indeed, some historians claim that the symbol morphed for the Babylonians, who then took over, almost as a good luck charm, warding off evil spirits. And much of this association, seal of protection, kind of stayed through the ages. So the Persians that then took over Babylonia kept the symbol on some of their coins. The Greek goddess, so Sin became a goddess, Diana or Artemis, was used by the Macedonians. It appeared on Roman coins and then was used by the Byzantines, which we'll get to a bit later. It was also sort of very non-denominational. So you saw the symbol on the banner flags of the Christian Crusaders, on the banner flags of Islamic armies, and it kind of made its way through Europe. So we see it pop up on coats of arms in Germany and even as far away as Ireland. And then it's here in our timeline in the Middle Ages that we get to our modern interpretation of the Star and Crescent as being associated with the Ottoman Turks take over Byzantium, or Constantinople, as it was known then in the wars from the 1200s through the 1400s. So Constantinople, which is modern-day Istanbul in Turkey, the symbol was seen throughout the city and on its flags because hundreds of years before, when it was still known as Byzantium, the city was spared a siege by the Macedonian troops because there happened to be a crescent moon that night and the light deterred them. So the king of Byzantium at the time sort of took on the Greek moon goddess Diana and made her sort of the symbol for his city and put the crescent on all the flags throughout the city. And we don't really know if the star was with the crescent at that time, but we can sort of assume that it was because the two came together. So now we get to the point where the Ottoman Turks come and overthrow Constantinople and take over. But given their great fortune and having worn the symbol on their own armor, they decide to keep it for the city. And so it becomes sort of the flag of the Ottoman Empire. And then we sort of enter this period of expansion of the Ottoman Empire as they take over parts of North Africa, Europe, and of course the religion is Islam. So, you know, having the symbol on the ships, flags, and the sails, and on coats of armor, people began to associate the Star and the Crescent with Islam. And so that stayed until the fall of the Ottoman Empire, when it was broken up, which wasn't until World War I. Interestingly, and then Turkey kept the flag, the symbol of the Star and the Crescent, and other Muslim nations also adopted the Star and Crescent to their flags. So such a fascinating symbol that really sort of tracks the path of humanity through the Middle East and Europe and Africa and into Asia. And to think that it's been with us for thousands and thousands of years as civilizations have grown up and gods have been worshipped and then disappeared, and then new gods have emerged, and as empires have sort of risen and then fallen again. It's kind of sort of wondrous to look into this as we look at the Star and the Crescent. We're sort of looking back into history and really connecting to our species and our evolution. So a really beautiful chance we have tonight, getting to experience this seal of protection for in real life in 3D, and that would have inspired them through the ages.
That was Helen Avery, Slooh's human spirit correspondent. Wasn't that enjoyable to hear about the history of such a widely used symbol? And we're looking at these live streams coming in from the observatory of this absolutely classic crescent moon and Venus, the evening star. And we've had a tweet actually from viewer Dave Early. He says his city's flag is the Star and Crescent as well. And I didn't know this, but he's actually in Portsmouth, which is not far away from me, but I didn't know that Portsmouth had the Star and Crescent in its flag as well. I wonder if that had to do with it's a naval docks and has been since Henry VIII's time, so maybe there's a little bit of that in there. Now we are going to take a quick commercial break. Oh, I want to show you this first. This is our other live stream that we have coming in. This is our all-sky camera. This is a special low light camera that points directly up at the sky and shows us 180 degrees. So you can see on the left, those are the Slooh domes. You can see the half-meter telescope in the dome. So if you turned your head round to kind of thing, that's how you'd sit. You can see a couple of pesky clouds there. Hopefully they'll disappear before Slooh members start pointing the telescopes. But to the right, around the 4 o'clock position, unmistakably, the 2 brightest objects in the sky. In fact, you can't even see any other stars yet. The one on the right is that crescent moon. The one on the left is a bright Venus, and that's what you'll see tonight if you can pop outside. If you've got a clear western horizon, which is kind of southwest tonight anyway. We are going to take a short commercial break, but when we return, we'll be discussing the importance of that new moon to Muslims around the world. And a little later, I'll be speaking with Henna Khan about her children's books that introduce kids to the Muslim holiday Ramadan and that practice of moon sighting. So we'll be right back after this.
This February, a ring of fire will rise over planet Earth. Millions will be plunged into the moon's shadow as it races across the planet at supersonic speeds. The annular eclipse will make its way across South America, through Chile and Argentina, before crossing the Atlantic Ocean, making landfall in Africa, casting Angola, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and Zambia into shadow. On February 26th, explore an eclipse like you never have before. Right here on Slooh. Space for everyone.
If our past expeditions to Africa have been anything to go by, that's going to be rather a difficult but quite exciting expedition to Angola. We are going to bring you that live. That's going to be pretty cool, isn't it? And we are looking live at this beautiful, beautiful image stream coming in from the half-meter telescope. It's an enormous telescope with an ultra-sensitive CCD on it, so it's really quite difficult actually imaging an object as bright as the moon. Anyway, welcome back to our Star and Crescent show here at Slooh, where there really is space for everyone. I'm Paul Cox, and you can follow my exploits and travels to Slooh's observatories and our expeditions around the world on Twitter by following AstroPRC. You'll also get to see some special behind-the-scenes videos from the observatories as well. Now, earlier we heard from Helen Avery, Slooh's human spirit correspondent, about the ancient symbol of the Star and Crescent, a symbol whose celestial counterpart we're watching live today through our telescopes at the Institute of Astrophysics of the Canary Islands. But now we want to discover why the new moon is so important to those of the Islamic faith, whose religious calendar is based entirely on the lunar cycle. Now, to learn about this, we spoke to Sheikh Abdul Bari Yahya of the Al-Maghrib Institute about the way Islam uses the moon to mark time. And as you've heard, it's a practice known as moon sighting, where they attempt to make the earliest sighting of this new moon. And it's this verified sighting that marks the beginning of each Islamic month.
The beginning of each month is determined by the actual sighting of the crescent, the waxing crescent. The first sighting is the first day of the month, and of course we determine when Ramadan begins with the actual sighting of the crescent, and also the beginning of Hajj, also the beginning of Hajj, right, which is one of the pillars of Islam. The beginning of the month of Dhul Hijjah is also determined, of course, by the beginning, when the beginning of the month happens, and so our worship, in the times of worship, and is determined by the moon, the sun, and the moon. But it's a joyful time, believe it or not. It's part of our faith to actually go out and look for the new moon, especially the moon of Ramadan. The Prophet Muhammad, he used to urge his companions to go out, and they would say, we used to compete with each other in seeing who would be able to see that new moon that brings the happiness of the beginning of Ramadan. And when we see it, there's a supplication. We supplicate to God. We say, oh Allah, oh God, let this moon pass over with us with blessing and faith and safety and strong faith in Islam. And we supplicate to God when we see that also. Everything is connected to God. And when we look at the creation of God, then we see his greatness.
With the sighting of the new moon this week, you saw those classic new moon shots a second ago. Absolutely beautiful. Muslims around the world are welcoming the sacred month of Rabi al-Awwal, the month when it said the Prophet Muhammad was born. So you really see it's so ingrained in that entire faith. Now, we're going to take a quick commercial break, but when we return, we'll discuss this very topic with children's author Henna Khan, who's written a number of books introducing kids to the Muslim holiday of Ramadan and the practice of moon sighting. And make sure you stick around until the end of the show, because we'll be announcing the winner of our contest, who's going to receive a copy of Slooh's brand new book, The Saturn Above It. We'll be right back with Henna Khan after this short commercial break.
We're excited to announce the release of our first book, The Saturn Above It, an anthology of short fiction about space. Available now at Slooh.com.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade, not because it's easy, but
All steps for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Give the gift of the universe. Give the gift of Slooh. A celebration of every magical moment in the night sky. For just $60, you can give the budding space explorer in your life the gift of a full year of Slooh membership. The perfect holiday gift at Slooh.com.
That is such a cool present for anybody who's got a space orientation in your household. Now, welcome back to our Star and Crescent show here at Slooh, where there is literally space for everyone. Look at this. This is definitely my favorite feed tonight. This is a live feed coming in from our constellation cam. Has a very large field of view, and there you can see this absolute classic crescent moon and the bright evening star Venus. Told you about that earlier. Now, earlier in the show, we talked about the importance of the moon in Muslim traditions and how the Islamic faith uses the moon to mark time in the Islamic calendar. Now, to learn more about this, I'm delighted to welcome our next guest to the show. Henna Khan is an author of children's books, including two introducing kids to the celebration of Ramadan and some of the practices of Islam, including moon sighting. Henna, hello, welcome to Slooh and our Star and Crescent show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
What do you make of this live image stream coming in? Isn't that beautiful?
It's stunning.
It is.
Perfect.
We've been treated tonight to some absolutely brilliant feeds, and it was a bit cloudy at the observatory, so we were a little bit nervous today. But anyway, let's get down to your books. Why did you decide to write children's books about Ramadan and Islam to start off with?
Well, as a Muslim American who grew up, reading books about other faiths and cultures and never seeing any about myself or my traditions. And then as a mother who was reading to her children and not finding anything that I could share with my kids or their schools to explain what we do practice, I thought it would be a nice way to introduce that's accessible to children and really to teachers and parents as well, so they can learn a lot about a month that not that many people, at least when I was growing up, understood at all. And now I think people are starting to learn a bit more about what Ramadan is and what our holidays are, but I think there's room for more people to learn a bit more.
I think there is, and I have to say, I did take a peek at your books earlier on, and frankly, I wouldn't limit them to saying they're children's books. I think they'd be fabulous for anybody to read, frankly. But both of your books, both of them involve the main characters participating in moon sighting. So why did you feel it was important to include that particular practice for kids?
Yeah, well, I think like your earlier guest mentioned, the moon is such a significant part of Islam and Muslim culture. And in particular, when it is the month of Ramadan and we're waiting for this month, anticipating this month to begin because it's so significant, it does start with the sighting of the moon and then end with the sighting of the moon. And that's when you know that you've completed this wonderful month and you have a big celebration to look forward to. So my first book, which was Night of the Moon, I really used the sighting of the moon and the following of the moon over the month to frame the book and give it structure for a number of reasons. One, because it is just a beautiful object to look at, and I love the idea of it changing shape throughout the book and having the main character Yasmin follow it and see it and pay attention to it, because I think we do even more during the month of Ramadan when we realize that, oh, now the month is coming to an end, halfway, because the moon is full now, or it's starting to wane, so we know it's winding down. And you have this little girl who's discovering that. I thought it would add another layer for educators to be able to use this in the classroom and add, beyond the multicultural or social studies aspect, to also have this science aspect. And then, of course, it's just so beautiful. So it just makes
it so perfectly illustrates how so many civilizations face. I mean, Islam is not the only faith that uses the moon to mark the passage of time and the ebb and flow of the seasons. So and your books do, I say, illustrated. Did you do the illustrations in this?
I did not. No, I'm only a writer, so we had beautiful art, gifted to us that brought it to life.
The style of them is absolutely beautiful. Have you got some more planned?
I do. I have a novel coming out in March, which is called Amina's Voice, which is also about a Pakistani American girl and her family. It's not centered around the moon, but centered around her family. And I think at a time like this, it's important to build tolerance and understanding of different peoples. And I'm hoping that it'll open people's eyes to a Muslim American family in the U.S., practicing their faith and living their lives like ordinary Americans. So that's targeting older kids. So it's not a picture book. It's for grades 4 through 8. So I'm hoping people will check that out.
Henna, before we let you go, now I kind of know the answer to this because I did look at your bio earlier, but before we let you go, we like to ask all of our guests what inspired their interest in space. And it's ranged from having a wonderful science teacher at school to accidentally picking up a book about space, or even watching a kind of favorite science fiction TV program as a kid. But what was it that first inspired your interest in space?
I would say it was probably my parents. My father was a Trekkie, so I grew up with watching Star Trek with him. But also, just I think because of the significance of the moon in our culture, that was something my mom, even now, every time she sees the moon, or a new moon in particular, she congratulates me as something beautiful. And when we see the moon, like my character does on Night of the Moon, we say Subhanallah, which is praising God for the beauty of the moon. So I think that in particular made me fascinated with the moon. But then as a kid, I think I loved to read, so I loved the idea of space travel and time travel and everything related. And I was lucky to actually start my writing career with scholastic book clubs, and I actually worked on a few books about space for a series they had called Space University, which was also so fun for me to get into the mind of a kid and think about what makes space exciting for them. And I think there is so much that is exciting, and I'm just happy to have a connection in some way.
Well, please carry on doing that and come over to Slooh and share whatever you're up to with the Slooh community. We'd love to see that. And actually, you're the second guest whose space kind of interest, inspiration has been Star Trek with their father. So you're in good company.
Perfect.
Henna, thank you so much for joining Slooh today, and we hope to see you back here very soon.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Bye-bye. That was Henna Khan, writer and children's book author. Really, frankly, I would not put any age limit on them. They are absolutely charming, charming stories. So do maybe pick up a copy of those. Yeah, absolutely fabulous stories. Now, what are we looking at here? We have still got the new moon from our half-meter telescope at the Institute of Astrophysics of the Canary Islands. Let's just take a quick look actually through our other feeds, because I made some small adjustments to the Meteor Cam while Helen Avery was talking a little bit earlier. So we might be able to see those. Anyway, that kind of just about wraps up our Star and Crescent broadcast here at Slooh. But before we go, we've got to announce the winner of our contest. Now, we have had so many great submissions over the past few days. Thank you to everybody who's participated. Apparently, it was a pretty hard pick, but the folks back at Slooh HQ in Connecticut have come to a decision. Drum roll, please. No. Okay. Congratulations anyway to Alex Carlton from Bradford-on-Avon, Wiltshire. Now, this was no setup whatsoever. Bradford-on-Avon is literally 2 miles down the road from me. So congratulations, Alex. You've just won a copy of our brand new book, The Saturn Above It, an anthology of this short fiction about space. The book collects just great stories from some of the most famous writers in recent history. And there you can see that lovely crescent moon, and that's so crescent moon right over to the right of the image, and then Venus over to the left. And as you can see there, Bradford-on-Avon, charming little town in Wiltshire, has some light pollution. So I suspect that the moon and Venus are probably the only bright things that Alex gets to see in the night sky. Our studio crew are going to be in touch with you, Alex, and they'll pop that in the post to you. Well done. Oh, now look at this. I'm so glad we got this up. This is our Meteor Cam. Now, if you've been watching our meteor shower shows, you'll know that this is the live video stream where we see meteors whizzing through. And there it is. I mean, you just cannot get a better illustration of just how bright the moon and Venus look in comparison to all of the other stars. So this is the kind of view that you're going to get a couple of hours after sunset, wherever you are, if you look west. And there is that crescent moon above the dome that actually houses the half-meter telescope, and then off to the left. And that's exactly how it'll look for you. You'll see this incredibly bright star, but that's Venus, not a star at all. Anyway, I would like to thank everyone who submitted their photos and artwork over the last few days. Apparently the crew over in the US have really enjoyed seeing all of those, and we're amazed at how creative our viewers are. We'll be running more contests like these in the future, where you'll be able to win books and Slooh memberships and other goodies that we've got lined up for you. And if you don't want to wait, or you'd rather guarantee yourself a prize, early Christmas present, you can purchase both of those at slooh.com, or maybe treat a loved one to a year's membership of Slooh to control the telescopes and enjoy the fabulous community of members that we've got. Now, I'd also like to thank our guests for joining us today. Helen Avery, Slooh's human spirit correspondent, who told us all about the fascinating history of the Star and Crescent and the symbolism behind that. Helen has also been working hard with the team on much of the new content for our new website launching in the not too distant future. Wow, we are so excited about that. Anyway, we also heard from children's book author Henna Khan, who told us all about her books, which are introducing kids to the Islamic practice of moon sighting. Absolutely charming books. We hope to see you back here for another live exploration of space. You won't have to wait long. We are going to be back on the 13th of December for the Geminid meteor shower, starting at 8 p.m. Eastern. Now, that is one of the best, if not the best, meteor showers of the year. So that is definitely not one to miss. The moon's going to be interfering a little bit with it, but with our special camera, we are still going to catch plenty of stunning Geminid meteors as they whiz through the sky. And we've also got some amazing shows on the horizon over the next couple of months as well. December 22nd, really looking forward to that one. We're going to be celebrating December solstice. We've got a new host joining us for that one, so that's going to be fun. Then in February, we've got our first solar eclipse of 2017. That Ring of Fire annular eclipse. It's going to be racing across South America, across the Atlantic Ocean at supersonic speeds before plunging parts of Africa into the moon's shadow. We'll be there to cover all of that live. And then, of course, looking further into 2017, we're already gearing up for the Transcontinental Eclipse in August. That eclipse will be visible across the entire continental US, and we'll have live coverage coast to coast along the entire path of totality. And of course, if you can't wait till then, make sure you join the Slooh community, because we do this every single night as we share the night sky using Slooh's mighty telescopes. As we look at this last image stream coming in from the constellation cam of that delightful crescent moon and that bright, bright Venus, I'm going to say good night to you. I'm Paul Cox, and this has been another astronomical production from slooh.com. We'll see you very soon, I hope. Goodbye.